Okay, guys, so how are we doing today? Hopefully better than me right now since I got that nasty stomach bug. Uh, Question. How developed is your sense of irony? Because this one is very ironic indeed. First of all, we have two stories to thrown together. First, we have Buttegieg urges end to endless U.S. war. Return to Iran. Climate deals as well. I'm saying Buttegieg partly because I heard it said that way, and the way it's spelled, it kind of makes sense. So I'm sticking with that. Democratic presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg on Tuesday urged a stop to the endless war that followed the September 11, 2001 attacks, and a return to the Iran nuclear deal and Paris climate accord scrapped by the Republican President Donald Trump. Wow, a Democrat that I actually find appealing, or at least saying something appealing. Didn't think it was going to happen. Buttigieg, a Navy reservist who was deployed to Afghanistan, repudiated Trump's go-it-alone America First approach to the world in the first foreign policy speech of his 2020 White House campaign. He outlined a policy based on America at our best, a foil to Trump's Make America Great Again slogan. The need for a new foreign policy vision could not be more urgent today, Buttigieg said in Bloomington, Indiana. This administration has embraced and emboldened autocrats while alienating democracies and allies around the globe. Oh, it's alienated allies, that's for sure. It's alienated a lot of people. I don't know about democracies. But yeah, the current Trump foreign policy is not so great. It's doing more harm than good. It's going to create some really powerful enemies in our future, I guarantee it. There's already a bilateral trade agreement between Russia and China. Make them really powerful in the trade war. As for physical war, well, we have yet to create an enemy powerful enough to actually seriously hurt us, except for maybe Iran if we keep going the way we have. North Korea is too small to do much of anything to us. They're mostly just a problem child. And as for his foil to Make America Great Again, well, it's basically the same idea, worded differently. He's probably not one of these radicals that say it's a code word for racism and it means genocide, Holmes. Like, no, it doesn't. I don't know where the hell you're getting that. The radical left is completely insane. But enough about them. He told an audience at Indiana University that the next American president must set the bar high on the use of force, especially if Washington acts alone, and urged Congress to repeal a law passed days after September 11 that paved the way for campaigns against Al-Qaeda and Taliban militants in Afghanistan. The world needs an America free from entrapment and endless war and prepared to focus on future threats, Buttigieg said. U.S. involvement in Afghanistan, for example, must come to an end. Here, how about an end to our involvement with the Middle East, period? Oh, but that's going too far, I suppose. Because even the Democrats are basically Zionists on one side, or they're anti-Islam on the other. Oh yeah, the modern neoliberals are pro-Islam, but the Democrats? Not really. But the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Buttigieg, is one of three military veterans running for president, and at 37, the youngest in a field of more than 20 Democrats. He's pulling in a second tier of candidates behind the two frontrunners, former Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. A Harvard University graduate and Rhodes Scholar who sprinkles French, Norwegian, Arabic, and Italian in interviews. You mean he, takes little smatterings of words from those languages? Or does he just suddenly switch through them for no reason? Whatever. He is among the few Democratic candidates to issue a foreign policy agenda so far. Yeah, I mean, he sounds a lot more appealing than most of the others in comparison. It's mostly in relativity. Abdication of responsibility. Buttigieg said that the 2001 authorization for the use of military force helped ensnare the United States in conflicts where the mission was not clearly defined and that Congress had abdicated its responsibility on waging war. Republicans and Democrats have argued for years that Congress ceded too much authority to the White House after the September 11 attacks. Divisions over how much control they should exert over the Pentagon have... Well, that's an interesting word. This has happened to me before. Let's take a look. Stymied. Divisions over how much control they should exert over the Pentagon have stymied efforts to pass a new law. I learned a new word today. Yay! Buttegieg also vowed to return to the United States to the landmark 2015 International Iran Nuclear Accord on the grounds the agreement was in the U.S. national security interest. Whatever its imperfections, this was perhaps as close to the real art of the deal as diplomatic achievements get, Buttegieg said, referring to the title of the Trump book. The United States needs to prioritize climate change as a national security issue. There we go again with the climate change. And should rejoin the Paris Climate Accords, limiting greenhouse gas emissions, he said. Buttegieg criticized human rights abuses in China and the torture and execution of dissidents in Saudi Arabia, and took the view that people who support Israel can oppose the policies of its current right-wing government at the same time. And another dig at Trump, who has generally fostered a close relation with Russian President Vladimir Putin, Buttegieg called Moscow a self-interested, disruptive, and adversarial actor. Now, this is how you oppose Trump, alright? Buttegieg is being cute, he's being subtle, and he's being civilized, which is more than I can say for the vast majority of Democrats at this point. And as for climate change, okay, there's another conclusion that the data also supports. Ice Age. Another ice age is coming. That's what I believe. Why do people reject that possibility in favor of climate change, even though both conclusions are supported by the data? Because climate change, if it's anthropogenic global warming, that means we can do something about it. And even if we don't, the death toll is much less. But if it is another ice age, there's going to be a lot more corpses. And a lot more dead people. But really, we need to learn to embrace the worst case scenario, because, you know, the sooner we do, the sooner we can get around to learning how to live with it. Because sometimes you just can't do anything about it. And as for greenhouse gas emissions, well, no, I don't think you can actually artificially heat up the atmosphere. However, I do believe that there is such a thing as air pollution. I have personally breathed it in. It's very smooth. Not really. It's about as smooth as drinking a cup full of glass. And don't even get me started on Beijing and how the air quality there, like if you have asthma, Beijing is a death sentence. Bottom line is, I don't think global warming is real, but I do believe that air pollution is very much real. And, you know, you can literally be smogged to death. We should develop some sort of technology that can filter out the air in the same way trees do. Get like a giant air filter and just stick it in the middle of a city. Will probably increase the oxygen level of the atmosphere too, which would be of numerous benefits. Although it would also increase the size of spiders and insects, because their size is relative to the amount of oxygen they can consume. But overall, this is going to be good for Trump, because he will have some real competition, which will force him to reconsider his campaign and his policies. If Buttigieg puts him on the spot, then Trump will want to try and come out on top. And that will mean he will force himself to improve in order to defeat Buttigieg. Competition's good for everybody on some level. So there you go. Moving on to a related story, and this is much more urgent. This is literally like breaking news. This is from breaking news from RT. You can trust this source in spite of being paid for by the Russian government. Partially funded by, well, mostly what they do is they just buy airtime on RT so they can disseminate public information through it. That's how they choose to do that. Anyway, this story is Pompeo blames Iran for attack on tankers in Gulf of Oman. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has said Washington believes Iran is behind the attack on 2 Japanese tankers in Gulf of Oman. He believes Tehran wants to end successful maximum pressure campaign of Washington sanctions. This is only the latest in the series of attacks instigated by the Republic of Iran and its surrogates against American allies and interests. they should be understood in the context of 4 years of unprovoked aggression against freedom-loving nations, said Pompeo. Earlier on Thursday, 2 oil tankers identified as Marshall Islands flagged Front Altair and the Panama-flagged Kokuka Courageous were rocked by explosions in the Gulf of Oman. There's so far little information on what actually happened, but one of the vessels was reportedly hit by a torpedo. Iran said it had rescued 44 sailors from the distressed tankers and called the incident suspicious. Pompeo didn't provide any proof for his claims, of course, because that'd be true to form of him so far, but reminded reporters that back in April, Iran threatened to interrupt the flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz. He listed a series of incidents in the Middle East, including the attack on tanker ships at port in the United Arab Emirates. The U.S. has blamed on Iran. There has been no proof offered by the U.S. that Tehran is behind the attacks, and Iran denies any involvement. Pompeo, however, claimed that Tehran was lashing out at Washington's successful maximum pressure campaign, which has consisted of several layers of sanctions. No economic sanctions entitle the Islamic Republic to attack innocent civilians. Yeah, and nothing Iran has done has justified this use of sanctions. It's highly inappropriate. I don't even think they should be using sanctions at all. But a U.S. ambassador to the UN, Jonathan Cohen, has been instructed to bring up Iran's attacks in the UN Security Council session on Thursday afternoon. In recent months, Washington has stepped up the pressure on the Islamic Republic to renegotiate the nuclear deal signed in 2015 between world powers, but unilaterally scrapped by the Trump administration last May. So far, Iran has indicated no willingness to do so, arguing the U.S. must stick to the deal it signed in 2015. Yeah. To be honest, I actually really like Buttegieg's proposal about going back to the Iranian nuclear deal and being more diplomatic. I actually really like that idea, compared to Trump's idea. But I otherwise hate the Democrats as a party. But Buttigieg, he's won some respect from me, I will admit, and that just feels strange. But, the fact that there's such a lack of evidence and a lack of fine detail about this, it almost makes me think, like, what if there isn't a malicious false flag here, and what if there is, like maybe there's like a third-party terrorist group acting on the behalf of Iran without Iran's consent. Now, see, that would make sense. That would explain the lack of evidence of Iran being directly responsible. That would explain their consistent denial. That would explain how they actually want to bring people back to the table, except for that one guy, whatever his name was. I can't remember right at the moment, but there was some guy in the Iranian government that was not so willing to negotiate. But yeah, it would explain everything. The willingness to negotiate, the denial, the lack of evidence, the lack of fine detail, the mysterious attack in Baghdad's Green Zone. It would all make sense if there was like some third-party group acting on Iran's behalf without Iran's consent. Like maybe some splinter group within the Iranian National Guard. That would make sense. But, that's just me theorizing. Make of that what you will. But, anyway,